Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, where we help you maximize your results with minimalist approaches to diet and exercise to help you break free of the dogmatic rat race and help you achieve a greater sense of fitness independence. My name is Matt Schifferly, founder of the Red Delta Project, and today I have a massive treat for you, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm speaking with Josh. Josh is the creator and head dietary expert over at GMB Gold Medal Bodies. And I've been a huge GMB fan, as you all know. I've referred to them plenty of times, recommended their stuff. And they're coming out with a brand new program, which is just all got me excited. It's fantastic. It's all about the skills of healthy eating. And Josh created it, so I invited him here on the podcast to talk to you about it. Let's go get the scoop about it and stuff. Josh, thank you very much. Welcome to the Red Delta Project podcast, my man.
Oh, thanks for having me on here, man. And that was like the best intro ever. Like, I totally appreciate that. Yeah, we're so totally on the same team.
Yeah, so let's start right from the beginning. The name of the program.
Yeah.
Eating skills.
Yeah.
I mean, the word says it all. It immediately breaks through this idea that in order to be healthy and to, quote, eat right, you've got to follow and be obedient and do it the right way. But skill-based eating is a very different approach. It's more nuanced. It's got a lot more flexibility, but it also has a lot more potential for growth and progression. Tell us about the beginnings of this program and how it all came about, for starters.
Wow, how it all came about. Like I started as a personal trainer in 2004, and I think like most people in the fitness world, like started off with something looking like diets or working for a company that did like some sort of like calorie counting program or all that kind of stuff. And it became pretty clear over the last like decade and a half that like the people, I didn't realize it at the time, but the people that already had like the behavioral skills to like kind of like be in the driver's seat with their food actually did well with any diet or any calorie, like they did well with any set of like any game to play. And then the people that didn't have the skills required didn't do well at any of them. And so it started to show up that like what most people were looking at like a failure of willpower or like they didn't find the right diet or whatever was really just a skill deficit.
Wow. I like how you're phrasing this, because as I'm exploring more of just other things in the world of fitness, like in exercise and stuff, you get down to these base behaviors and skills and stuff, and it really does make or break almost any game you play. As you said, like you got these skills, you'll make almost anything work in almost any situation. But
Right.
if you're lacking in those areas, you can try anything and it's not going to work. So is that kind of the reason why some people, when they come to us and they're like, I've done everything, nothing works?
Oh yeah.
Is that what's really going on?
Oh yeah, totally, right? I mean, like if someone doesn't have like a healthy way to manage portion sizes, like with a certain amount of flexibility that can fit into the entire rest of their life, then at some point they're going to hit something where stress kicks up or schedule kicks up, and whatever they were doing, or whatever rigid diet they were doing before breaks, right? Or if they don't have a way of working with like cravings for snacks or stress eating or procrastination eating or eating because they're tired, if they don't have skills for any of those things, then it doesn't matter what diet they're doing, because at some point they're going to be tired or stressed out or procrastinating or whatever. So yeah, totally.
And that resonates with me as a trainer and a coach over the years, because I think one of the most stressful things for us coaches is it's really easy for us to say, okay, I'll give you a great workout. That's great. But the eating thing is such a tough nut to crack. And every time we get like, how was the weekend? Well, you know, it's like, well, I was great until I got this huge stress load of work at work, or until I had to stay up all night because my kid was sick or something. As soon as life happens, the whole plan just goes right down the tubes, and they take it upon themselves as like, oh my gosh, either the plan isn't working or I'm a failure, and they internalize it, and it does not end well. So you're saying basically that these skills give you the ability to cope with those situations, so you come out shining on the other end.
Yeah. There has to be some sort of flexibility built in, right? Like it's okay to have some sort of guidelines for easier decision making. It's good to have some skills for checking in with your own hunger and fullness levels, and even like your emotional state and things like that. But if you don't have the flexibility to maybe like dial it back a little bit or loosen it up, or have some different version of what you're going to do the night after your kid was sick and you're up till 4, then you're like, this is never going to work. Like those things are going to happen. Your car's going to break down, your refrigerator's going to, like things are going to happen. And so what we need is not to look at like what's perfect or what's optimal, but like, what does it look like to be in the game when things are going pretty well? And what does it look like to like still be in the game when things kind of like all come apart?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you have some rigid diet rules and you end up working an extra 20 hours this week, you're probably not going to have the time to like prep or cook or whatever is required of those diet rules. But if you have a set of skills and a set of behaviors, maybe one of them is putting the fork down between bites so that you eat slower and you can notice when you're full. You can do that with any food. You can do that with any stress level. You can do that. And a lot of these have that amount of flexibility. You can fall back on that even when a traditional diet approach wouldn't work.
Sure. So let's explore some of these a little bit. Let me give you a hypothetical situation here. So one of the biggest issues that I keep running across, both for myself and with those I work with, is the whole snacking thing. Because they're great breakfast and lunch, or they fast until lunch if they're doing that sort of thing. But that middle afternoon time, is a real tough nut to crack. And that's when the willpower just goes right out the window. Stress is mounting at work, and it seems like a perfect storm. And that vending machine is looking so tempting. Or the Starbucks across the street from the office, right? So the snacking thing can really sabotage you in a big way. What are some of the ways that you've used and tools that can help us out in those situations?
That's my favorite question. So first, it's cool to look at a couple like basic guidelines to make sure that like logistically we're okay, right? So first, I'd actually take a look at lunch and say like, was lunch balanced? Was lunch enough, right? Because I have gotten a lot of clients that are basically just like over dieted, and so lunch is always like as small as possible. It's some version of like a salad, no carbs, no whatever they're into at that time. But it's just too little, and it's not going to make it to lunch. Mm-hmm. And then it's not going to make it to dinner. And then that brings up guideline of like, how far apart are meals? We like to have clients fast like 4 to 6 hours between meals, right? It's just pretty reasonable. But if you've got, if lunch is at 11:30 and dinner's at 8, then that's a really long, like no one's going to make that. Like
I'm
no
not
one
gonna make that. I'll be falling on the floor.
yeah. But like clients end up there, right? And they're like, oh, I just have no willpower. And, and it's like, well, maybe you need a snack in there. Let's plan for that. But let's say that like dinner and lunch are about 6 hours apart, and that's fairly reasonable, and like lunch is pretty good. Then what we want to look at is like what's going, like so we're assuming that we handled like actual true hunger, right?
Yep.
That they actually had enough food and it was the right balance and like that. So then when 3 o'clock hits, we want to look at a couple things. We want to look at what's going on. We still want to have them check in with like, am I really hungry? Like, do I feel a hollow feeling in my stomach? Do I feel hungry for a balanced meal or just like this specific treat? Or does this build over time? Like hunger builds over time, whereas cravings can peak and fade. It's like, can I wait it out a little bit? And if it's not hunger, either by skill or by guideline, we can look at like what's going on, and we can start to check in with like, oh, it's stress, like my boss just yelled at me, or I'm tired, or whatever. And there's some really neat research on like coping strategies in general. Mm-hmm. And every single coping strategy you could use is more effective if you identify what's actually going on. And every single coping strategy is less effective if you don't identify what's going on. So if they can actually just check in and be like, oh, you know what? So this isn't hunger. This is stress. I'm like stressed and I'm tired. Then that gives them a little bit of like it loosens it up a little bit. And then we can look at what do we do in the situations when I'm tired and I'm stressed. And like the first and kind of like most obvious would be like some form of self-care, right? Like, oh, you know what? Like I actually need a break. Like I've been working solid and I'm stressed out. My boss yelled at me or whatever. I need a break. I could go for a 5-minute walk around the office and actually like, I'm fine. And that would be good for me. And, because that comes up with a lot of clients where they don't actually ever take breaks unless they eat something. And so it's like, no, you could actually just take a break at most jobs, right? You could probably take 5 minutes. And then the other side is more of like and this comes from like contextual behavioral science, like more of like a willingness to feel it, like an acceptance that it's actually normal to be stressed out. And it's even like normal to be tired in the middle of the afternoon. And so we can work on skills for getting a little bit of distance from that, like recognizing what it is and like accepting that that's a normal thing and just like letting that be there, letting that kind of like ride along with us and realize that like stress comes and goes in its own time and like the thoughts around that come and go in their own time. And then of course the third option would be a combination of those two.
It's not like we're fighting it or trying to ignore and stuff. It's just kind of being aware of it and saying, okay, that's happening. That's an acceptance. Like, all right, now I recognize it. Now I can deal with it. Versus if we ignore it or we fight it, it may build or we get into a reactive mode and suddenly we're just out of control and we don't know why. It's because we were just trying to bury it down. It's no different than like if someone's really angry and pissed off and they just hold it down and then later in the day, they're yelling at someone for no good reason. And they're like, whoa, hold on. It's the same kind of scenario, right?
Exactly. You totally nailed it. Totally nailed it.
Got it. This is fantastic. Now, I want to rewind a little bit because you mentioned a term back there that just totally hit the nail on the head in my own awareness. Use the term over dieting.
Oh, yeah.
I love that. I've never heard that before, but it resonates with me personally so well. And I think, we've got this term overtraining out there that everybody knows, like, oh, right. Okay. And it kind of causes people to pump the brakes a little bit sometimes, maybe more than they should, but at least it makes them aware of, you can take this too far.
Right.
But it seems like with diet and stuff, you can't be too strict. Like you can't be too good about this. But that phrase brings about the same kind of awareness a little bit. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah.
This idea of over dieting, like what is over dieting?
Yeah. No. I was funny. I was like, where did that come from? Did I read that somewhere? So basically, here's the mess that is the dieting industry. Is that people will do a diet and they'll hold on for as long as they can, and something will come up, and they'll quote fall off the wagon. And then they wait for a while. And then the standard thing to do is they're like, well, the last one didn't work. I'm going to try something more strict.
So it's like the overtrainer is like, well, I'm not getting results, so I need to like double my workload.
Yeah.
It's the exact thing.
Yeah. Someone's like, oh, paleo, that's not enough. Let me do Whole30. That's not enough. Let me do carnivore. Let me cut out everything that isn't steak.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. You're so right.
Right? It just keeps going.
I was on a forum, and I don't know how I got on this thing. I mean, this was like 90s internet kind of forum, probably archived and stuff. But it was funny how so many of the people in the thread were saying, okay, I was on this diet plan, successful for like 30 days or whatever. Now I'm going to step it up and now do it all organic. And now all without sugar. So they just kept layering on the restrictions. And as I got further down, I'm like, what are these people eating? Just organic carrots? Oh, no, so they're high on their glycemic index. Okay, so just carrot green? Like, what left?
Totally.
But it's the same attitude of just more and more, only it's less. And it's like a boa constrictor just getting more tight around you.
Yeah.
And it's got to be not a good scenario, I imagine.
I think it would be unpleasant.
Yeah.
I mean, like we know that the fail rate's high. We know that the stricter the diet rules, like the more black and white relationship someone has to foods, like the more they label them as good or bad, the worse it is for their well-being, their relationship to their body, and their relationship to food. Oh, and that's also the number one psychological predictor of weight loss failure. So
Interesting.
Oh, and that's the other thing I do. I'm going back to school for psychology, and like eating behavior is like kind of like I like to dig into that research.
Sure.
So yeah, from like a well-being perspective, it's the worst thing you can do. It would be to get stricter and stricter,
Wow.
and it just increases your failure rate.
And yet
So
we're emotionally driving. It's like getting sucked into a black hole. It's
yeah,
like we just almost can't even help ourselves. So let's talk
marketing.
about the emotional side a little bit and the
Yeah,
mental side you were talking about, because even though you and I are talking about this and we're saying these things, like it's going in the ears and resonating maybe to a degree, but ultimately this stuff isn't so much about the facts and the logic and the
yeah,
knowledge. It's how are you feeling about the scenario and the food and stuff that's really in charge.
yeah.
Like it's an emotional and mental thing. So what are some of the mental and emotional things? So say we're getting tighter and we're getting more restrictive and stuff. How do we break out of that cycle?
It's a really good question. It's a really good question because it like the marketing is so strong, the conversation is so pervasive. You're going to, even after people break out of that cycle behaviorally, we're still surrounded by that marketing. We still hear our friends talking about like the next stricter diet that they found. So the biggest thing is again, we're trying to get this um a little bit of acceptance about that and a little bit of like distance from it. And so part of it's just like kind of like just forgiving yourself, like, hey, it's actually normal to have these thoughts, and it's even like normal to want to do that strict diet because it looks really cool and enticing and like the magic thing. And just accepting that like these diet thoughts are going to come up because we've probably been practicing them for decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also it's just like the culture we're swimming in. So first is just accepting that they're going to come up, and the second is getting a little bit of distance, where we can, one of the easiest ways to get distance is just to label it as what it is, as like, oh, that's like diet perfectionism, or that's a black and white diet thought, or however you want to label it. By labeling it, we can get like most of my clients have dieted for decades, right? Some like since they were kids, right?
Professional
And
dieter.
so they can say like, oh, you know what? I've had this diet thought for 20 years, right? And so like that's, if it pops up, that's probably okay. Like that's probably predictable. But I don't need to act on it, and I don't, like you're saying before, like I don't need to fight it, but I also don't need to feed it. Like I can just notice it coming and going, and I can take actions that are in line with my values, which would also like require like doing some work around clarifying your values around food, and like who you want, like what character strengths you want to embody about food, and
Mm-hmm.
the example you want to set for your kids about food.
Sure.
And so can I take the actions in line with that even when these thoughts and emotions come up? And again, like getting that distance is largely a factor of like labeling it, noticing it, letting it come and go in its own time, knowing that it's human,
Mm-hmm.
especially in our culture, to have that.
Sure.
So like the diet thoughts and like the emotions, like, oh, I feel really bad about myself today, you know, which a lot of clients will be like, oh, I feel sad, and then they'll immediately go, what they'll say is, I feel fat,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I don't like the way my body looks, where like feeling fat has become a catch-all for like every kind of negative experience, and realizing that negative experience is like a normal part of being human. And
Sure.
there's summer and winter.
Yeah. It's amazing how we internalize some of that stuff and it comes out as a physiological feeling. I mean, we know the body doesn't change that much. But I remember when I was struggling with my own dietary things and I was a professional dieter and stuff,
Yeah.
I would swear if I had two French fries at lunch that, oh my God, I feel all soft and puffy now, right? I
Totally.
feel fatter. I feel, and it was nothing about the French fry. It was the fact that I, quote, let myself go. you know, with just that one indulgence right there. Never mind the fact that at that time, like the whole low fat thing was huge and so I had this massive sugar and carb loaded dinner. And if there wasn't much fat in it, I felt like I was lean and skinny.
Yeah.
You know, but boy, if I had those 2 French fries, oh man, now I got to go work out, right? And it's just the messages we're telling ourselves. It had nothing to do with the actual reality of our fitness and what the food actually is. Because now I'll eat a pizza and be like, hey, I feel really thin. Like, I feel great. You know, it's all in the internal monologue. So recognizing it is the first key to changing that around into a more positive way, is what you're saying?
Yeah. And I love that you brought up that, like, the difference between like how you felt about having the French fries versus like the reality, because that's so huge. I mean, like, we've been so taught to have this perfectionist mindset. Like, I had 2 French fries, everything's exploded. My body, which, like, I keep trying to tell people that, like, nutrition isn't that fragile.
Yeah.
Right? It's 2 French fries aren't gonna break the whole thing.
Yeah, our bodies are pretty robust. Like, quite a bit.
So that's a good point. And really, all it comes down to is again like knowing who you want to be about food, and just making sure actions line up, even if some thoughts like that come up, where, like, even if you're like, oh, like, I'm working on some flexibility right now, and I'm trying to have maybe a little bit more carbohydrates when I used to be afraid of those, or maybe I'm having dessert once in a while, and before, if I had dessert, I was off the wagon and I'd have nothing but dessert for like 3 weeks. And as you're trying to bring this in, I think it's normal for people to still have those same thoughts, right? And so anyway, it's just a matter of, like, especially in the beginning, can I have those thoughts show up that I've had for 10 years and still take the actions in line with my values? Even if I don't, like, feel super good right now, can I just do these behaviors? And in my experience, when people, like, true up their behaviors to their values, that's probably the best route to having the perspective on flexibility catch up. You know, because it also helps to have that experience to go, like, hey, you know what? Like, I tried having dessert in the middle of the week. It wasn't even a free day.
Right.
I tried having a little bit of dessert, and I'm having dessert once a week or twice, whatever now, right? I actually try and not have people put a frequency on it, because we want to work on choice, but that's another thing. But, like, it would be normal for those thoughts to come up the first month that you try that, right? So yeah, that's why we work on actions.
So this whole idea of making it a skill thing, because this is one of the reasons why I find that the whole dieting culture is surviving and thriving, despite, I mean, everyone in the world, they're like, it never works and stuff, but I'm going to try the next thing, is that it offers more of an immediate gratification. Like, there's a honeymoon period with those kinds of things. Like, the first several days, you feel like you're getting empowered, you're taking control, you're like, yeah, this time it's going to work. That's when you're evangelizing it, and it spreads out like a virus. And so it's got that exciting period, like you're writing the latest book and you're getting all amped up. But with skills and things like this is a bit of a longer process. It doesn't have that immediate gratification of, like, oh, you're going to lose 10 pounds in a week and you're going to feel righteous and awesome and so fast and everything. It's going to be like, you know, no one wants to hear the whole, well, it's going to take time and it's a process and trial and error and stuff, but there's a much longer return and a much better outcome with this sort of thing, correct?
Yeah, you only have to do it once. like how many times do you want to gain and lose the same, like, 15, 20 pounds? Wouldn't it be nice to just, like, handle it? You know, I mean, like, even if it's slower, it'll have been faster by next year. You know, when you don't have to repeat the whole cycle all over again.
Yes, absolutely. I can relate to that. I can relate to that in a big way, because you're just climbing. It's the whole tortoise and hare kind of thing. But let me give you my own personal experience. Sometimes when I was getting some distance from those dietary thoughts though,
Yeah.
and I started to recognize them for what they are and making the conscious choice of like, I'm not going to play that game anymore. I'm going to take a different path. It wasn't immediate gratification and fast results,
Right.
like physically and stuff, but oh my gosh, the amount of relief I felt during that. Like I felt like I had this huge weight lifted off my shoulders that I didn't even know I was carrying around. And it came off in chunks over time, of course, but the first time it came off, it was such an immense amount of relief. And I'm like, just overjoyed by it and stuff, even though nothing physically has changed yet, just my emotional relationship changed.
Yeah.
So people start to experience that sort of thing with this new program you guys have created as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's people that have posted like 4 days in, they're like, I just can't believe how much more peace I have around food. I'm trying to remember like the individual things where people were like, people have been like, I had some dessert with dinner and that wasn't like the end of this program for the next 20 weeks.
Right. Yeah. So
like they're like, I can do that once.
Benefits fairly quick.
Yeah.
What you're saying is things, because when you start looking at things differently, it's like changing the kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
Really quite impressive.
Or even a couple of people have been like to just not be counting, to not just be like counting every single thing, all that, like that can be managed in like in a behavioral way.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That's good. That's really, really good, because it's funny how another part of that dietary culture is to like glorify that stress and that hard work and the suffering and the fighting and everything like that. And it's like doing the right thing and fighting the righteous fight and everything. And I used to tell myself that all the time, like the more I'm suffering, the better I am kind of thing. And then when I stepped back, I was like, oh my gosh, like what? That was ridiculous. Thank gosh I don't have to do that anymore. Like what was I telling myself?
I think part of the reason we get so hyped about it is that we're told that that's what's required, right? Mm-hmm. Like we watch The Biggest Loser, we're like, that must be it. Mm-hmm. Like it must take that. Right. And so when we're suffering like that, we think we're doing the right thing. It sucks because it's like the people that care the most, the people that are the most motivated, they're suffering the most. Mm-hmm. And they just haven't ever been given an alternate path.
Right.
Like they don't know like, oh, I could just work on plating balanced meals and putting my fork down between bites and noticing when I'm full and like figuring out why I snack and like not snacking due to stress and like having tools for that. And, you know, like they haven't been given a tool. Like I'm going to wait 10 minutes before I make a decision about having a snack or about getting seconds, which is like so basic. And yet all of a sudden people are like in the driver's seat in a way that they've never been before.
So it's giving you more control rather than feeling like you're just getting led around impulsively and like you don't have control. And ironically, we turn to those diets as a way to try and gain control. But all we've done is we've taken control from our skills that were our behaviors that we're not skillfully aware of, and we're just giving the control to a diet. We still don't have that control.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We're still losing.
Yeah.
This is the answer to now we're gonna finally get you control.
I always struggle with how to say that. Like what the best, because like because the answer is yes. I typically say like we're gonna put you in the driver's seat with food. Because for the people that are over dieted, I feel like control has been the problem. You know, like the diets like feel like exactly what you said. It feels like control, but it's not. And so in a way, I want. Like this is where words are hard.
I see where you're going with it, because at the same time, it's feeding into the control culture.
Yeah.
Like there's an element of surrender that needs to be there.
Yeah.
And when we're obsessed about control and every little thing, because obviously we can't control life.
Right.
Come up, right? And I think that's what makes us panic a little bit is knowing that control is, one, it's an illusion, and two, it's never absolute. Yeah. So when it comes to like food and our appetites and everything like that, like the idea of you'll always be 100% in control of everything.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying about like, well, because that's not how life works.
Yeah.
There are just some times when it's like, yeah, you know, large pizza, stat, you know, and
Yeah.
I've been in those situations
Totally.
before and felt like I don't have control.
Yeah.
And it's not the end of the world if and when it happens, rarely. And if you recognize
Yeah.
it, that it's
Yeah.
happening, and that gives you more of awareness. So I guess a way to phrase it would be awareness over control.
Awareness is great.
Yeah.
Awareness, like awareness, choice, and like the skills to take actions that are in line with your values.
Yeah. I like
Right.
that. That's very cool.
But it really, though, you're absolutely right. Like part of the rush of diets is it feels like now I've got the set of rules. I know exactly what to do. I'm in control, which is great until life happens.
Yeah. It's kind of, I'm thinking of a weird analogy right now. Like when I was learning to drive up in Vermont, and every kid in Vermont, when they're learning to drive, they're like, oh, I can drive in the snow. It's easy. It's no problem until that car slides. And then the white knuckle the steering wheel and their eyes go as big as saucers.
Yeah.
Totally freaked out about it because they've never experienced that before. And it's the same thing here. It's like I feel great as long as I feel in control.
Yeah.
But that doesn't last. There's going to be times when life slides sideways on you and things are going a little bit crazy. So what this program you're developing is saying, all right, when you're sliding, here's what you do. Here's how you control it, because that's what I learned when I was learning to drive. My dad took me out in a parking lot and he's like, I want you to intentionally lose control of the car over and over and over again. So I knew what it felt like.
Yeah.
It saved me many times when I would be driving, I'd lose it. And my friends would be going, oh no, oh no, oh no. I'm like, relax, I got this. And I'd pull it right. So that's kind of what this is. It's like, all right, things are going a little crazy. I used to freak out in these situations. I used to have these reactive, impulsive behaviors. But now, because I have awareness and I have tools, it doesn't change the fact that things are a little squirrely. It changes my relationship with them. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's such a good metaphor too.
I'm good at those kind of things, and they always involve cars. Ask anybody who's watched my stuff long enough, and they're like, "God, another car now."
Well, like everybody drives, so that's like everyone can relate.
But no, that's the way I look at it and stuff. So we're looking at skills, and I think one of the greatest things about skills that I learned from an exercise standpoint from GMB was, because there's a big emphasis on the skills from a fitness perspective, is the great thing about skills is there's no end.
Right.
Like they just keep getting better over time.
Yeah.
There's no, and I think that's one of the things about that I always got frustrated was, okay, so your diet means you can't eat X, Y, and Z. And for whatever reason, if I was able to do that for a string of time, I'd be like, great, I was perfect this week. Well, now where the hell do I go from here? Like there's a dead end to it. And I think that's where a lot of people go with, okay, now I'm going to restrict myself even further and over dieting. But what's
the next level? It's
learning how to do things better and better and better. And the results just keep coming.
Yeah.
This is the sort of program, because how long is the program?
20 weeks.
20 weeks. But we're not talking about 20 weeks of results. We're talking about 20 years of results.
Yeah.
40, 50, the rest of your life being better off from this program. I think that's very exciting.
I think it's cool. And I love that you bring up like movement skills. It could be any skills. I mean, like if you think about if anyone like learned an instrument or like learned another language or learned to drive, right? Like these things are all hard at first and they get easier over time.
So, and what I've noticed is dieting and the obedience type of things is the inverse.
Yes.
It's easier at first and it gets harder over time.
Yes.
So the opposite direction. This may be a little more challenging at first, but it gets easier and easier to the point where you're almost on autopilot. you're aware of it, but I mean, I don't have to think about how to drive anymore, right?
Right.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
same thing with a lot of other skills. So if we can get that with dieting, it's the complete opposite of it doesn't get harder over time. It gets easier,
Yeah.
which I think is
Exactly.
fantastic.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Um, there was something you said. Oh, the driving again. So going back and like getting out of control over and over and over again,
Hmm.
right? Like you built that skill, and you also built kind of like a you weren't caught flat-footed by it,
Right.
right? Like
Hmm.
like you knew what to do, and you expected that that's a thing that might happen sometimes. And I think that's another thing that's missing for a lot of people, is that they don't do any obstacle planning around food.
Hmm.
Where it's really powerful for people to just look at every single week, what are the like what does my schedule look like, what's my stress level going to be like, what are the obstacles I'm going to hit,
Hmm.
and like what can I do about those. And then when those come up, they aren't caught flat-footed,
Hmm.
right? They aren't like shocked, right? Like, oh no, this happened.
Yep.
And then they follow the plan or they don't. And it works or it doesn't. But it's like you had to do that in the parking lot over and over and over again. um that's kind of the way people have to approach a lot of obstacles in their lives.
Hmm.
But there's something really powerful, well, there's something really, really effective about just expecting them to be coming, you know.
Hmm. Knowing that they are around the corner to get out of that the self illusion of, oh, I'm sure I'll be fine from here on out.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's so weird, our human condition, how we do that, right? Oh, I'm sure the sun will always be shining. Even though we've had bad weather in the past, it's like, no, it's
Yeah.
well, I'm sure it's going to be like this for the rest of my life.
Right.
It's so weird how we think about that. So
We do.
getting out of that, knowing it's coming, here's what you
Yeah.
do, versus getting shocked by it, I think is an immensely powerful set of tools to have.
Yeah. I think I think in terms of short-term behavior change, it might be the most important piece.
Hmm.
And you can look at that from the standpoint of like, oh, I've got like Tuesday's going to be terrible because I've got whatever going on Tuesday, and I need to figure out what I'm going to do about that. Or you can even look at it like, next week's going to be a hard week. Can I dial back like all my skill practice? Can I just practice one thing? Can I maybe just get vegetables at lunch and dinner and call that good?
Hmm.
Whatever you dial it back to. But being able to like dial it back without feeling off,
Hmm.
and being able to have obstacles and try and figure out a strategy and test that strategy.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed too is social pressure. Like, people who
Mm,
are jumping into this program and are starting to
yeah.
learn these skills, they're inevitably they're, I'm guessing anyways, but if I was starting to do this and I was a gym goer and I was in diet culture and a professional dieter for a while, chances are my friends are going to be part of that culture as well.
Yeah.
What do you see as a good way to deal with the fact that, say I'm like 3 weeks into this program and suddenly my best friend comes up and goes, oh my gosh, the latest diet, it's fantastic, I feel amazing, kind of thing. How do people kind of not get sucked into that black hole again and recognize that for the pitfall that it can be, just stay the course with something like this? Because that's going to be there. That temptation's going to be there
It's
all the
totally going to be there.
time. Yeah.
That's totally going to be there. um I think we do so much practice in terms of like noticing like what kind of like perfectionist diet thoughts, like where these things come from, where these like rigid diet rules come from, and like noticing and getting some distance from those, that we can use that same skill when our friend comes up and is like, I just tried to, and we can notice like, oh, it's okay to want the quick fix that we know doesn't exist.
Mhm.
It's okay to be like, ooh, I want that at first.
Mhm.
And to just know that we don't have to act on it. And for a lot of my clients, it is a certain amount of like reminding themselves like, hey, I'm doing this because I have done 14 diets before,
Yeah.
right? It's not like and and there's not like earlier you said, awareness, right? Like awareness is really key to
Mm-hmm.
be, you know, and to be like, I just don't want to do that again. And
Yeah.
for some clients, it's really clearly like what you're saying about like the how do you put it? Like you didn't language it like a well-being benefit, but like that thing where you're saying like you're offloading that weight that you didn't know that you had.
Yeah. I don't play that game anymore.
Yeah,
I
I don't want to
retired
put that back on.
from dieting. I am retired. Thank you very much. Like, I am done, kind of thing. Because I think a large part of it too, do you go over much as far as like pattern recognition in the program?
A little bit. That's gonna show up probably mostly in like the obstacle planning kind of stuff. But say more about that.
Okay, so like one of the things that helped me break free of that a lot was I got interested in the history of just our fitness culture.
Oh yeah.
Because back in college, I took nutrition, that was my minor. And they
Yeah.
delved a lot into this is how people used to try and lose weight, and used to diet, and used to do things. And I just found it was very fascinating. But when you look back several hundred years of how people are trying to do it, I started to recognize patterns in our approaches. And
Oh, like
whenever
yeah.
someone comes up with a new, like, oh, it's the latest diet, I feel like I'm watching reruns of Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, this time we're getting off the island. I'm like, oh, God, it's the same song and dance. No, this time we've got the science. This time we've got the research. Look at the studies. I'm like, that's what you said the last 500 times. It's the same song and dance because the approach is always the same.
Yeah.
We're playing the same game. It's just different rules, but it's the same idea. And that's what really helped me break free. It's like, all right, I'm sick of this sitcom. I'm going out and playing, you know, basketball or something because it's the same thing. So when it comes to pattern recognition, both in the macro and micro cycle, so you look back several hundred years and it's like, okay, it's eat this, don't eat that. It's the same diet, doesn't matter what kind of thing, it's the same kind of approach. But when it comes to personal, like, okay, end of the week, I'm stressed out, I have to go hit the bar and I'm gonna get sloshed. Okay, after several weeks of that, it's like, I see a pattern here.
Yeah.
Now you recognize the pattern. That's the first step in identifying and being more aware of, okay, something's going on here. I need to start addressing this in a different way and getting the tools to know it's coming. Like Friday night, I know my coworker's going to come and say, let's hit the bar. I'll say, fine, just one or two, and I'll be blackout drunk all weekend, kind of thing. So, or eating too much, or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
So recognizing the patterns is part of that awareness, I'm assuming, yeah?
Yeah. So if every week we're doing some obstacle planning and we're like, if this comes up, then I'm going to do that, right? And we're looking ahead, like what could come up? All of a sudden we're like, hey, wait, the thing that's going to come up this week is the same thing as last week. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely, right? And then another thing that happens is a lot of times where people are like a certain obstacle occurred like it was a different thing every time. They're like, no, this time my boss yelled at me. You know, this time the vendor was frustrated, or, you know, whatever it is. And you're like, oh wait, these are kind of all flavors of the exact same thing. This actually is like the exact same pattern, little tweaks.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. And then you can start building a library of like, you can start saying like, okay, if this shows up, then I'm going to do that kind of self-care, or I'm going to put in this skill, or I'm going to do this kind of acceptance. And maybe you're like, a lot of folks will develop maybe like a little menu of things that they can do, you know?
Options.
Yeah, so they've got options when that pattern comes up again. And then the other thing that can be really helpful for breaking patterns like that is just putting in a pause. And that could be 1 minute, that could be 10 minutes, that could be whatever, but just like putting in a pause between getting the craving, getting the offer to do something, getting whatever it is, and making the decision. And so even if they decide to do it, they're still breaking the pattern between like, I want it, I'm going to have it. I want it, I'm going to have it. If we can just put some distance in there, man, do we get in the driver's seat with our food, right?
Wow, that's powerful stuff. So even if you do the same thing, it's just disrupting the pattern of behavior, something
Yeah.
different going on.
Yeah.
That's a crack in the door. You can wedge in more different behaviors over time, right?
Yeah. 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 And then, yeah, exactly. It just breaks that pattern, right?
Fantastic.
And then the other thing is that we in that time period, we can put in a certain amount of like checking in with my, like checking on the context, right? Checking in on the situation, the people, the food, my emotional state, how tired I am, like all that kind of stuff. We can, and we can actually make a decision, and we can say, like, you know what, my coworkers want to go out and get sloshed, and we did that the last 4 weekends, and I'm going to skip it. Or we could say, like, oh, you know what, it's my best friend's birthday, we're going to go out and get sloshed, and like that's what we did in college, and we're going to do that again now. Or like you could actually make contextual decisions.
I see. Yeah.
And it can look, you can, I mean, and this is the reason that like diet rules are so dumb, is that like nothing makes sense all the time, right? Like, I don't want to have a piece of chocolate cake every day at 3:00, but if it's my grandma's 100th birthday and it's time for chocolate cake, I'm going to have birthday cake with my grandma, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so anyway, the pause like helps with smashing patterns. It also gives us time to like make a contextual decision.
That's fantastic. One more point that I wanted to bring up is I like how this can break us out of the cycle of saying, all I got to do is just work harder at it. Willpower, like I'm just going to really set my mind to it, or now I'm really motivated for it kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's like saying, well, I'll just run faster in my next race.
Right.
That's your game plan kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important thing to break out of, because if it was that simple, you would have done it already. You wouldn't have failed. So that sort of thing, I know how tempting it is, because everybody's motivated and full of, fire and energy when they're fresh.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to stick to the diet after I've fallen off. But over time, that's not what you're going to think and feel. So this gives you a way out of that cycle as well, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? That's like the whole thing, is that it's a skill deficit, right? Like it's literally just a skill deficit, and you can't just say like, like you're saying, you can't just say I'm just gonna run faster. You can't just say, you know what, I'm gonna play guitar better. You can't just say, you know what, next time that I hit the ice, I'm just gonna drive better, right? Like nothing works like that. And the thing that's so weird is that if we look at other things in our lives that we've like developed skill at or become good at or that we're successful at, we approach it like skill learning, right? People are, so yeah, absolutely. It's a matter of building the skills so that A, it doesn't require as much willpower, right? And B, like you said, just realizing that willpower isn't a very long-lasting solution.
Yeah, that's just, that alone for me is just a huge weight off the shoulders, to know that you don't have to carry this burden when things are getting tough and just struggle through it, that you don't have to struggle for it. Like, there are answers and solutions, real solutions you can build and employ for the rest of your life through this program. This isn't some neat, weird trick or some thing that you can learn on like Instagram that's going to solve all your problems. These are real solutions you guys are building for people.
Yeah. Like, I used to have a mentor that said, under fatigue, you revert to your training. Right?
Say that again, please.
And under fatigue, you revert to your training.
Oh, yes.
And so it's like, what if it was the reverse? Like, what if you had these skills and guidelines so ingrained that when you got tired, you reverted to them? What if it was something you could fall back on when you're exhausted, when you're stressed out, when your kid's sick, when there's extra work?
So it's a safety net. In other words, you're up there on the trapeze and you're like, this is great, this is wonderful, but should you slip, should things go awry, you've got somewhere to land versus falling.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and again, I keep coming back to the same things, but it isn't like perfection or over. If you've got let's say you work through like 18 different, you work through like 12 guidelines and 6 skills, right?
Right.
And you pick the 5 that you use that make the biggest difference for you, and you have a rough week and you dial it back to 1, or you dial it back to 2. You're still in it. You're still doing fine. You're probably doing great.
I love it.
And then when your schedule comes back around, you ramp it back up. But you've got to fall back. You know?
You can't go 100 miles an hour on the interstate all the time. Sometimes you have to slow down.
Yeah.
Again, another car analogy, right? Like, anywhere you drive, you have to slow down at times. And you can speed up, but you only speed up when you can, not when you're trying to force your way through traffic.
Yeah.
When traffic be damned, I'm going to drive 60 miles an hour no matter what anyone else thinks, right? It's like, no, sometimes construction zone, you got to scale it back here.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with eating and all the skills. Sometimes you got to scale back, but that means you're still moving forward.
Yeah. See, that's another great metaphor, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, let's say you're driving to California, right? And you hit a construction zone, you have to slow down. You're still driving west.
Yeah, you're going.
And that's all. So, but that's perfect, because that's all we need. Mm-hmm. People just need to keep going in the right direction. Oh man, that's so great. People need to be less concerned about speed and more concerned about going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And can you keep going in the right direction even when it's hard?
Right. So this gives you direction, because the diets just say, go this way. They don't know if it's the right direction for you to go in.
Right.
They don't know.
They say go that way.
8 miles an hour.
And yeah.
And no matter what the conditions, no matter what traffic and stuff, if you're not doing this, then you're wrong.
Yeah.
People are like, I'm so lost because I can't do this one direction. But what you're saying is, you're a GPS. You give them the GPS, the tools, and you're like, all right, fine. So you can't go that way. Pull up the GPS and says, well, you can take this detour. You can go this route. And here's a way that's even quicker. So it gives you the ability to plot your own path, but you're still going the right direction. And you know it's the right direction because you're improving upon those skills. So you're improving and making progress over time. And not only will you get to your destination, but you can potentially even go beyond it and then have the tools to say, okay, I reached my destination. Now I want to go somewhere else. Now I want to go in a different direction. So you don't just have the tools to go to one place. You can go anywhere you want with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Very powerful stuff, man. I'm really excited about this program. Where can people find more about it? Where can they sign up?
GMB.io.
GMB.io. And the full name of the program again?
It's just GMB Eating Skills. We're keeping it simple.
I love it. Eating skills. Is there somewhere that someone can reach you for more information, or should they just go through the GMB website there?
GMB is probably the best. I wrote a couple blog posts on there. There's great. The sales page has a lot of information in the video. I do have a blog, losestubbornfat.com. And if someone wants to pour through like 12 years of blog posts, there's tons of information there too.
Yep.
But the newer stuff's better. And like, if people dig this, there's a cool article on the GMB blog about like why diets work until they don't. And see.
All right, GMB.io, everybody, head there now. I mean, obviously, driving, don't pull over to the side, be safe about it. But seriously, if you're motivated and as excited about it, this sort of thing as I am, you definitely want to check this stuff out. It's 100% full RDP endorsement. There's nothing about this that I wouldn't endorse 100%. GMB, they've been around for a long time. They've just been the leaders in the industry as far as the skills of movement and physical. Now it's coming to diet and nutrition, which just makes everything all the more complete and satisfying, so you'll get the full package and stuff. Josh, thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate it. I've learned a lot. This has been fantastic. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much, man. This is so much fun.
Yeah, it was. All right, folks. If you have questions, again, the reddeltaproject.com. You can find links to anything that Josh mentioned here as well. And also, if you're listening to this on YouTube, thoughts, comments, questions down below as well. I'll answer those for you as well. I'll talk to you next week. Till then, be fit, live free.